Good evening. There are 3 frogs hopping. There are another 3 frogs hopping. I'm a mystery guide.
Guide, my neighbors are all nauseous and sick in bed. They look sick. And myself as well.
Yikes! Zombie! You need to wear a mask! You spit on me!
Maybe it's some kind of curse? If so, what am I gonna do? Can I stay alive?
A curse, eh? Shall we go and take a look at the site later? This time, let me tell you a scary story about a curse. This is a story my grandpa told me when I was a junior high school student. My grandpa heard it from his own dad. In other words, he heard it from my great-grandfather. In the mountains of my hometown, there is an old-fashioned shrine where there is no Shinto priest. Enshrined there is a cursed god. There are a few legends about that cursed god. If you treat the god poorly, a disaster will happen. What a cliché, but there was such a story as such. Warring States period. The lord of the time had a son who was out of his control.
There's no such thing as a curse. It's pathetic to be frightened by something like that.
Despite saying so, it is said that the son took out the spirit of a deity and used it as a toilet. However, since he is the son of the Lord, the villagers can't say anything strongly. What will happen now? The villagers lived in fear for a while, but nothing that they feared happened. It seemed they lived in peace, but 3 years later, something strange began to happen. There are 5 things that have been passed on. Part 1. Unexplainable and mysterious phenomena occurred, although no details were known. Part 2. A number of villagers have disappeared. They didn't even have a single reason to disappear. Part 3. The Lord's face was swollen up, but the cause was unknown. Eventually, he recovered but went blind. Part 4. The Lord had 3 sons, besides his son who was disrespectful to the god. All of them were seriously injured in battle. Part 5. His troubled son went into the mountains and was nowhere to be found. It's a very strange story, isn't it? The villagers said a curse had taken its toll on them. They tried to appease the god's wrath, but it was impossible. Not wanting to stay in the cursed village, people left one after another, and it has turned into an abandoned village. Well, it's just a story that's been passed on. It might be just a rumor. Time went on, and it was a few years after the Meiji Restoration. This was before my grandpa was even born. Even then, there was no Shinto priest at the shrine in the mountains. Occasionally, a Shinto priest was invited from another area and people had him perform an exorcism. The spirit of a deity brought out by the troubled son was carefully managed so that no one could touch it. There were no curses and it was peaceful. However, there are always some stupid people in every era. One day, a group of youngsters from the village gathered talking. Apparently, my great-grandpa was there too. Then, the subject of the cursed village was brought up somehow. There's no such thing as a curse. Japan opened its doors and became a civilized country. You can't make progress if you're trapped in such old superstitions. It seems that there were many people who agreed with the young man who claimed that. How that happened is a mystery, but they decided to look at the true nature of the spirit of a deity in order to deny superstitions. Great-grandpa said, "I'm sure they just had a light-hearted feeling that he was going to test his mettle." In fact, it was night when they headed to the shrine. He said there was a playful atmosphere when they were joking around while frightening each other. Great-grandpa didn't go, but the shrine where about 10 people headed to was quiet and a bit eerie. Someone who was there later talked about the time back then. A lot of the details are now understood. Then let's go! The deity is supposed to be in the shrine! Then they went into the hall of worship. There was a small altar. At the back of the stand was a paulownia box tightly wrapped with string. Perhaps this is the deity. Hey, are you sure you want to open it? It's too late for that. Japanese boys should not say such a miserable thing. It's a little creepy, sure, but it's nothing serious. Then, the young man who started it lifted the lid of the box. What the hell? There's only 3 magatama in it. I never thought I'd be frightened by something like this. The reassured youngsters became strong-willed, and it is said that they had a drinking party in the shrine until morning. Of course, the whole village was aware of that fact, and the youngsters were strictly told off. I heard the landlord took the youngsters with him to the shrine to apologize just in case. There was no particular curse, so the villagers did not blame the youngsters any further. But then 3 years later, Hey, here it comes again! There's another deer being skewered to death. It's been strange lately. The boars, monkeys, and deers have been dead like this. That's not the only case. A lot of pebbles were being thrown into my house and the house next door. And my dog has been barking at the site where there's nothing. It seems that my great-grandpa also saw something strange around that time. As he was heading to the bathroom in the middle of the night, he suddenly looked out. What is that? He couldn't go to the bathroom and hurriedly crawled under the futon cover. Well, that's scary. No real harm was done like this, but eerie things started happening all over the village. The villagers began to think that there was something wrong. They have come to think that it was probably because of that incident 3 years ago. They went again and again to the shrine in the mountains for apologies, waiting for this to go away. However, there was no sign of a breakthrough and the victims began to appear at last. A villager entered the mountain and was found with a mangled body after being attacked by something. From here on out, it's all panic. The child who went out to play didn't come back. 4 people who were making the rounds suddenly disappeared. The person who had been calm suddenly started screaming like a madman and disappeared into the mountains. A daughter from a happy family committed suicide by cutting her neck in her home. These happened in a little over a month, and the villagers were completely overwhelmed. It was at this time that the old man of the village made a proposal. The Kuroneko shrine on the other side of the mountain has long been in charge of religious services for this village's shrines. Why don't we make a request to the Shinto priest there? There was no other way out, so the very next day, they decided to head to the Kuroneko shrine. The landowner of the village brought the main culprit of the events of 3 years ago with him. While talking to the priest about the event in detail, "Well, that's weird," the Shinto priest said. "The deity of the mountain shrine is not a magatama, but a bronze mirror. I'm sure it was placed on the altar. The thing that the troubled sun in the Warring States period had been rude to is said to be this bronze mirror. I've never heard of a magatama in a palonia box." As a matter of fact, this was the first time the landlord learned that it was a box made of palonia that the youngsters had opened. He thought up until then that they had done something bad to the bronze mirror. Then what was that box that I opened? I can't tell before I see it in person, but this is not a kind of curse by an evil spirit or cursed god. Maybe it's the work of a more heterogeneous something. Maybe the god of the mountain shrine might have had a role in sealing that something. The Shinto priest said he wanted time to look up the remaining documents, so he decided to meet again later. By this time, the neighboring villages like the army garrison near the village also started experiencing strange phenomena. Something has got to be done as soon as possible. Then, 2 days later, the Shinto priest visited the village. He started talking about what he had found out. "There is a mischievous something in this area from a long time ago. It is said that it used to kidnap people. So the people turned to the indigenous god and asked the god to get rid of it. The ability of something to tap into the power of its attacker was too strong. Even the god couldn't exterminate it, and it was barely sealed. Not being able to use its power, that something has been in that magatama this whole time. But the youngsters of this village had broken the seal, and it had started attacking people again." "No way! But during the Warring States period, something similar happened when the Lord's Son did something bad to the bronze mirror. I'm sure it must have been a curse that time, but it's completely different from this one. Anyway, let's seal it again, with the help of the mountain god before it's too late." Over the years, that something and the magatama have become as one, and it can't keep a distance from the magatama. It's probably still lurking around here. The Shinto priest headed for the mountain shrine. All youngsters who were present at the site where they opened the box of palonia trees 3 years ago were gathered, and they were isolated in the area surrounded by a rope like a sacred boundary, and the ritual took place. The youngsters were shaking with fear, and they hoped that something would be safely sealed. But rough footsteps and laughter was heard around the shrine. "What the hell?" "Don't be deceived. Perhaps that something is coming closer." Until the ritual was over, the villagers were instructed to never go out. Something that was definitely not human had come outside the shrine. It is said that people became nauseous at the smell of the beast stinking at their nose. The god of this land has descended on the bronze mirror. That something is not allowed to enter the temple of worship. You can focus on the ritual. Even while the priest was saying that, there were sounds of gurgling, scratching the walls, and banging around here and there. And finally, it's morning. The ceremony ended successfully, and everyone was exhausted with the release of tension and exhaustion. When you opened the door to the hall of worship, oh, this is... I expected it, but it's terrible. Trees were knocked down, and countless footprints and scratches that we think were made by the giant creatures were left. It was said that the dead bodies of birds and raccoon dogs were scattered around. For now, we've sealed that something in the Magatama, but we still don't know what it is. We must never let this happen again. Never, ever again. Don't open or take out the box of the Magatama. That's what we have to pass on. The landowners and youngsters seemed to take the priest's word very seriously. Well, thank you for listening to the long story. There are a lot of things that are still not fully understood. You must be wondering why I'm telling you this story. As a matter of fact, someone broke into the local shrine. It is said that most of the ritual equipment and sacred objects were stolen, apparently, including the Polonia box with the Magatama. It's been almost 2 years since the box was stolen. We can only hope that the tragic events that always happen on the 3rd year won't happen anywhere. Based on the past events, I'd say that something attacks people who are within 10 kilometers in the area around the Magatama. I'm already afraid of that. And Grandpa also says, there's nothing we can do about it now, and if you don't know where the Magatama is, there's no way to deal with it. I know this won't do you any good, but you guys should take good care of yourselves.
This is the house I live in. Please, guide, appease the curse.
Yikes! What a dirty town this is! And the smell is terrible!
That's strange. I don't feel the disastrous energy or evil energy from this land.
Does this mean...
It's probably just contamination from poor hygiene. You should start by picking up some trash and by washing your body properly.
What?
Anyone can get sick with this. Why don't you just go and clean it up?
Yes, ma'am.
Subscribe to the channel or press good and be part of the Kuroneko family. So, we'll see you in the next video. See ya!